Well, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Cassidy. I'm a member of the Board of Directors at AppFed and a mom of a son with EOE. He was diagnosed 7 years ago and he's 18 now, so transitioning into college will be new for us. So I'm excited to welcome 2 college-age students and then a parent up to the panel today. Brady Allen, Zach Brunette, and Dave Mitchell. Welcome and thank you. If you want to do a quick introduction, I know a lot of you have already listened to Brady and Zach, but for those of you who have not, we'll do a brief introduction. Yep, go ahead, Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave Mitchell. I am, as was said, a parent of a child with EOE, so you probably know my wife Kristen over there, probably more than me. And Irene's running around. She is 16 years old. She was diagnosed when she was 2. I may share a little bit more later, but her story has a lot of similarities to Zach's, with one major exception right now, which is that she is not on Dupixent. She is currently taking the budesonide slurry and PPIs and has been food trialing for many, many years and has a decent number of foods on her safe list, although none are safe without the medication. And I guess one other possible relevant piece of information, we live on the Central Coast of California. So our local GI doctor is at Stanford, about a 4-hour drive away, and then we see the folks at Colorado Children's for our primary folks for EOE.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Brady Allen. I was diagnosed with EOE in 2020. It was my sophomore year of high school. Since then, I've had 6 endoscopies, lost 30 pounds 4 times. When I had those endoscopies, the first endoscopy, my eosinophils were so inflamed that they had to quit counting after 100. And just, I found out I was allergic to dairy, eggs, wheat, and soy. And being an athlete, that really took a toll on my body, and confidence and, losing all that weight. And so I'm on Dupixent now. And since, as of the spring of 23, I haven't had any problems. So it's been a game changer for me. And, trying to be the person and athlete that I want to be. So.
Hi, my name is Zachary Brunet. I just graduated from the University of British Columbia in British Columbia, Canada. I've had EOE. I was diagnosed when I was 13 months old. I've gone through a bunch of different treatment plans, as some of you might have heard in my earlier talk. So I've gone through 6 different treatment options across 20 years or so. And I've done probably close to 100 scopes by now. And yeah, now I'm on Dupixent, and like Brady, I think Dupixent's working really well for me. And my safe food list my allergy list is very small now. So, yeah.
Great. My first question is, what was your initial reaction to hearing the diagnosis as patients and a caregiver?
I was 16, 17 years old when I found out. I grew up a normal kid, eating everything, playing sports, doing all that. And then it was like a month, December of 2019, I was, football season had just ended, was getting, starting training again, was eating mac and cheese and drinking protein shakes and doing all that stuff, trying to gain weight for the next season. And then come January, February of 2020, I couldn't eat anything. Went on like a 5-week span of feeling sick and, getting all the EOE symptoms of swelling in the throat, the burning in the stomach. And it was really demoralizing, not being there, with my teammates working out and, just not feeling like myself, not being able to give the energy off that I wanted. And then to come to find out that, I was allergic to dairy, eggs, wheat, and soy. And, there was a big pizza place in my hometown that we'd always go to, and not being able to eat there now, or not being able to go to Dairy Queen and get a Blizzard, really made me humble and really made me thankful for the little things in life. But yeah, it was definitely tough.
Dave?
Yeah, so Irene had been having trouble with eating ever since she started eating solid food. And as I imagine some parents can sympathize with, we've been to many doctors and gotten all sorts of unhelpful advice and blaming of what was going on. And so when we finally got the diagnosis, me personally, I think two things happened. One was that I'd never heard of this condition, so I had to quickly Google it and learn as much as I could instantly. Also because I was not actually at the appointment, I got the call at work from Kristen. So I did all the research I could in the next half hour, but I think it was a lot of, maybe not relief, but at least we could move forward, right? At least we could name what was going on and we could try to deal with it, which was much better than what the previous year had been for us.
Great. And how has your, follow up with that, how has your understanding of the disease changed over time?
Ooh, that's a good question. So we went to the AppFed conference, this was in 2011, just a few weeks after that diagnosis. And so I think my understanding of it has evolved with everybody, like with the scientific community's understanding of it, right? And so I'm not sure how specific I can get, but I can say with everyone else in this conference, we learned about how everybody understands it different, but also as the treatment options have changed, kind of seeing where we can go with Irene, what kind of options she has. Like Zach, she started with the elemental formula at first, and that's not necessarily what people are doing these days. So, yeah, I learned with everybody else in the room.
Great. Brady, because it's newer diagnosed for you.
Yeah, I was kind of, just kind of lost at first, and really had to take it upon myself, me and my parents, to really dig in and figure out, what exactly was causing this, or what was setting me off, and why. So it was tough to go through that, and I think my understanding's kind of evolved, and figuring out what works for me, and when I did have flare-ups and stuff, because there was a time I was on a bland diet and would still have little flare-ups here and there, and trying to find little mechanisms to work with that. But yeah, I would say mine kind of evolved as I got older, to understand, really digging in and trying to figure out what worked for me. So.
What about the transition to college because you, Zach, and Brady are in different categories where, Zach, you've kind of been dealing with it your whole life. How, Brady, while you're already in college, what strategies have you used over the last few years? And Zach, for you, how did it kind of help you as you went along, and how can it help others that are going to college prepare?
Yeah, I think just really being on top of it, I think it made me a lot, I had to grow up quicker, I would say, and being more disciplined and making sure, I was eating the right things and putting the right things in my body, and, trying to stay away from things that were going to cause inflammation and things like that. So I think and then, using the resources around me, I've been very fortunate, to have a medical staff at Louisville, and you have nutritionists and dietitians there to help you too. So using those resources and asking them what I can do to prevent inflammation, try to help as much as possible too, and put the right things in my body, and then just being curious and asking questions to the doctors and things like that. So I don't think you can ever ask too many questions. So.
Yeah, to echo what Brady said, just communication. That's a skill that I learned early on. I always loved going to sleepaway camps and stuff like that. So I was I had to really take control of it myself. I remember there's this hockey camp I went to in Minnesota for a week. I would have to be able to talk to kitchen staff on my own and tell them, and talk to them about what I could have for the day, and what were my options and stuff like that. So I got a lot of practice in before I got to university. So I feel like I was pretty well prepared for that experience in knowing what to do in that situation where you're on your own and being independent and controlling the eosinophilic esophagitis.
You both talked a lot about the medical care. For you, Dave, how was it working with specialists, and any advice for those out there with newly diagnosed patients on how to get the right team?
That is a good question. I guess two things come to mind. One is definitely asking a lot of questions, right? There's people know, the doctors know things, the dietitian, nutritionists, all those folks, allergists, they all have things to add to your understanding on how to deal with this. So asking questions of everyone is really helpful. I also think that connecting with folks in a community like this is really helpful because other patients, other parents, they have a lot to add, right? They have experiences that can guide you in ways, they can help you know what questions to ask your doctors. So connecting with other folks that have been through it has certainly helped us a lot.
Absolutely. I'll pause for questions, either online or in the audience. Nothing? Okay. What has been the hardest part about managing this long term?
So I can start. So I mean, I've had it for around 20 years now, so it's kind of become a part of me. But like the hardest part, I would say, is just having to be adaptable and knowing that like kind of going in with the knowledge that this medicine or treatment might not work for you long term. So I mean, as I said before, I've gone through around 6 different types of treatment. So yeah, I mean, just being able to adapt and change to what happens, because I mean, this disease can be, this disorder can be very unpredictable at times, and so there's no one solution for all. So yeah, I mean, just being prepared for every case is probably the hardest part.
I think for me, it was, it came on so late was, being able to, grow up a normal kid and have all those certain things and then have them all take away from you. It made me really grateful. I've been fortunate to reintroduce a lot of those things and through Dupixent and not have any problems. But I think the big thing was, having those things taken away from me for a while and, just hearing Zach's story and hearing some of the other kids that were here this weekend and, some of the problems that they have. Mine looks way more mild than theirs. And it's been great to, talk to them and hear their stories and experiences as well. So.
Dave, did you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, the real challenge was for Irene, not me, right? But as a parent, and this is where Kristen really shines, is trying to make sure that Irene has access to as many sort of normal experiences like every other kid has. And so that takes work on our part, and that's been a focus for us as she's gotten older.
You all talked about how you're adapting, but how have you found with others, friends, family outside the immediate family that are in it every day with you, how have you found that? Has it been challenging trying to get them to understand, and how have you navigated that?
Yeah, I think just, trying to explain, what I was feeling when it did come on. And, I think just sometimes, I think that trying to explain exactly what I was feeling and how it was affecting me, I think was hard to get through to people at times. And, understand that I'm actually really sick. It's not just some, low acid reflux or something like that. So I think realizing that, just getting across it was a bigger deal than, it seems. So.
Zach?
Yeah, for like non-close family members, it's always tough to explain it clearly to them, like the exact level of severity it is. Like I heard like my grandparents when I was really young were scared to even take care of me because they thought that if they gave me like any kind of wrong food that I would die. So I mean, for most foods it wasn't that case. Maybe for like dairy, which I was anaphylactic to. Yeah, so it's hard to really communicate that for sure. Just being clear, and it may take some time for them to truly get it. And you could always show them what you do to keep track of it. And there are easier ways to explain it. I mean, a lot of times I just default to saying I just have food allergies. Easy to just say like I need to avoid these foods so they won't trigger anything.
Yeah, that's absolutely, I experienced that as well, where people were scared to take care of my son, so you had to navigate and to, just kind of say it's a food allergy, so they're not afraid to be around you. So thank you for that. Dave, what about advocating for others about children's needs in schools? So, you know, Irene's a teen, so how has that been in school?
Kind of like what they were saying, it depends on who you're talking to, right? You learn pretty quickly. Some folks like get it or are willing to put in the time to get it, and you can trust them, and some folks don't get it, and so you're a little more wary. I think in general, our experience with the schools is that most of the folks that worked with Irene often, right, her classroom teachers and such, most of them like met with us, we talked with them, they got it as much as they could and kept her safe, right? Understood the situation. But some of the folks that you may not have seen very often, folks who just pop into our classroom, substitutes, folks like that, you can't expect them to really understand. And so there were some less pleasant experiences with those folks sometimes. But I think if you have the primary people at your, the classroom teacher, the principal, folks like that on board, then you can feel pretty good about sending your kid to school and that they'll be in good hands.
Good advice. What helps you stay resilient or hopeful when times are really tough? Zach?
I mean, I've always felt that I've kept it under control, like my understanding and my fear of it. Just not. I mean, one, I had my parents to support me, and they always did a lot of the hard work for that. So I always was comfortable knowing that they were there to take care of me. And then also just not making it like a core part of my identity, like always trying to do other stuff. So yeah, being able to control my fear or like any like scary moments through that way, that was always good.
Yeah, I think, like Zach said, just knowing you have that supporting cast around you, that's going to help you get through it, and just knowing too that it doesn't define you. It's just something you have and something you were dealt with, and it doesn't make you any different or any less unique, and so it's just something we all have to battle through, and I think that's why this event is so great, is we all get to come together and hear each other's stories and share experiences and all that. So
Anything to add?
Just the parent side of the same thing, right? I tell Irene often I'm the luckiest dad in the world, and so she has EOE, she has a million awesome things about her too that are much more important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love that. Don't let it define you. How do you grow from it? So, any questions?
Online. Alrighty, we've got a few questions coming in from online. For Dave, how do you and your wife divide responsibilities for disease management, especially now that your daughter will be coming into transitioning into adult care?
Excellent question. So when Irene was born, I'm a professor and Kristen's a teacher. When Irene was born, I actually had better, this is going way offline here. I had better leave, so I took care of her mostly for the first few months, but eventually Kristen stopped teaching and she couldn't really go back because there were so many trips to Sanford and so just dealing with the complications and the time it took to call up insurance and wrangle them for coverage. And so since I am the one that's away at work and she is at home able to deal with Irene's issues more directly, we both help, but she's more in the trenches day to day working with this stuff. I mean, I'm still around. I go to the doctor's appointments when I'm available. In the summertime, when I'm not teaching, I can go to stuff. But she does more because she's more available. And as a result, she knows things better than I do, right? I know what's going on, but she really knows what's going on. There's a second part to that question. Oh, the adult part. How are we helping transition? I think the number one thing is making sure that Irene is an active part of these doctor's appointments. At least from my point of view, that's what I'm seeing, right? She's there listening, asking questions, because in a few years, it's going to be her having to lead that. and I suppose also day to day, like advocating for herself in school and whatever activities she's doing. So just making sure we're transitioning her to the lead role and advocating for herself.
That's great.
Not a question so much, but just wanted to give a plug for AppFed if there are parents in the room of school-age children and they don't know about this. When my child was first diagnosed, I remember going to the AppFed site and literally printing off the 504 guide and taking that guide with me to my child's school so that could help me to design what she needed and what accommodations she needed for the classroom. So if you don't know about those resources that are on the AppFed site, they are amazing and they were wonderfully helpful when my child was, 5 and first in school. So just a plug.
All three of you love to travel, whether it be for sports, whether it be for pleasure, whether it be for school. What are some advice or tips you have for families traveling with severe allergies, with EOE, for traveling?
It's gotten a lot easier for me since I've been on Dupixent. I try to just take it, before I go anywhere, so I don't have to deal with it anywhere else. But when I was on the 2-year span of a bland diet, it was just nothing but asking questions and really digging in and making sure that I knew what was in everything that I was going to eat. And so I would say that was the big thing for me, was just the asking questions part. So.
Yeah, and to expand on that, just being prepared with having backup options or snacks, something I got into a habit of from when I was a kid, and my parents did, is always carrying around a snack pack that has some foods that I can always eat just in case. And then when traveling more long distance, just doing research into restaurants in the area you're going to, seeing what options there are. You can always call ahead of time if it's somewhat in your region. And yeah, just general being prepared for, you can always look ahead to where you're going. Like I go to school in Canada, and so I work with, and whenever I travel, I always have options in the airports that I know I can eat at, because I go back and forth through the same airports. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When my family travels on vacation, it's usually an hour to research before to make sure we feel good and know exactly where we're going. It sometimes changes where we go, but it's doable. Another question? Yep.
So my question is for all three of you, patients and a parent of a patient. Where did you each start in sharing your story and becoming a voice and being here and sharing your story? How do you, for someone, because I'm interested in doing that. So where would I start in sharing my story and being kind of a voice in EOE?
So this is not a specific answer, but generally, Kristen and I have always been pretty transparent just about life. I think we both have that same philosophy. And so even before Irene was diagnosed and was just going through struggles, or even before she was born, when we were looking to adopt a child, right? We were pretty transparent and just sharing with all our various communities at work and social and so on. And so once Irene was diagnosed with EOE, that's, I think, where we started, right? Was telling our friends and family, telling our bigger networks of people that we're with about, people that I'm sure none of them had ever heard of EOE, but now that whole group has heard of it and understands it because they know Irene personally, right? They've met her, they know her when she was a little kid, and to them, she's the face of it. So I guess starting locally with the people you already see every day.
I would say, for me, I'm living proof that you can, still achieve your dreams and goals even with dealing with this. So I think just, wanting to be a voice, wanting to get out and, prove to others that, this isn't a setback and it's something that's just a part of your life and, it doesn't have to hold you back.
Yeah, I mean, like my journey as a spokesperson is more new, honestly. I mean, I've been with AppFed for a long time now. I grew up in the kids and teens room. And I mean, I've given small talks. I've written some like small blogs for different organizations. Yeah, I mean, just being active in the AppFed community is the biggest part of it. I mean, just this year, I've kind of grown more comfortable with it. I mean, I'm usually very nervous about public speaking and all that. But yeah, I recently gave a big talk for Apogee Therapeutics about my patient perspective, and that was kind of like a first step into it. But yeah, so like just being involved in AppFed is like a big part of developing your voice and being a patient advocate.
Any other questions? Jen, did you say you had one online or?
Yes. Alrighty. We've talked about travel, which was one of the questions that came in. But Zach, you mentioned boarding school as where you went to high school. What sort of special plans, if any, did you have to manage your EOE while living away from home?
Yeah, so more of what I was talking about, being prepared. So before I even fully committed to going to school, my parents and we talked to the school about my dietary needs and restrictions. We got to talk with the head chef at the time, and we came up with a plan on what to do, what foods I was restricted to, and what I would be able to eat, and what like a typical day would look like. So like for lunch is the main meal. I would every meal I would go up to them and say, "Hi, what can I have to eat? Is there anything I can eat on the line, or is there something that you'll have to make me special for?" So yeah, I mean, just as we keep saying, just constant communication with the staff in the kitchen about it. So for boarding school, it was more the same of that, just being prepared and talking to them in advance.
I would ask Dave to maybe elaborate on school, because I know depending public-private schools are often difficult, and if it's challenging, do they help with that, or do you feel it's better just to pack a lunch at home?
Yeah, we definitely always packed Irene a lunch, and then I don't know how it's like other places, but her school had like the peanut-free allergy sort of table that she would sit at with I mean, anybody could sit there. But I don't think that the staff at the school was especially involved in the food part of it, and that's mostly for the best, I think, because we're going to be a little more attentive to that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting, you mentioned talking about socialization. You talked a lot about how you navigate and how you eat, but as far as like, how do you find it when you go out with others that don't? I mean, especially for Zach and Brady. I know, Brady, right now you said you don't really have anything that you can eat, but when you did, was it challenging being around others, being around peers? Yeah,
very. Like I said earlier, there was a spot in my hometown that was a big pizza spot that we'd always go to, and not being able to, go to that, and just, normal day-to-day life of enjoying things, and was tough. I think just, it made me very grateful that, now that where I'm at now, that I'm basically back to 100%, but those days were definitely tough.
Zach, for you?
Yeah, it's always a challenge being social with this. Like, I mean, right now I have a lot better control over it. My allergy list is very small now, but one of the big ones is seafood shellfish, and I have a lot of friends who really love sushi and that. So that's always something that I kind of have to either not go to or find an alternative food option for myself. So I always kind of feel bad if I have to like stop my friends because they really want to go to it, but sometimes I can go and just get something else there. So yeah.
Great. Any other questions from the audience or online?
We have a question for Brady. I was diagnosed with EOE last August. Any advice you will give to those recently diagnosed?
Yeah, it can be very demoralizing, because if you've, grown up and you've had a normal diet and you've grown up a normal kid, it can be very tough to, find alternatives and really figure it out. And it just takes time. You have to, keep pushing through and, like I said earlier, ask as many questions as you can. And I tried about every diet you can think of when I was going through, once after I was diagnosed. So I think it's just being diligent and keeping asking questions and, staying strong and just, knowing that it's a new thing and, they're still trying to figure it out. So.
You did talk about support systems. Obviously, it's a lot of people involved, but do any of you have a support system, whether that's the family, AppFed, that has really, truly helped you the most? Zach?
Yeah, I mean, my mom's sitting right there, and she's been the biggest support system. She's done a lot, taking care of me my entire life, dealing with making sure I was always prepared for every scenario possible, taking care of my doctors and that, and then also really encouraging my own independence to make sure I was able to take care of myself when the time came, at university and any other abroad situations when I was on my own.
Zach, going on to that one, do you handle your own care now, or is it a combination with you and your mom?
It's still a combination. It's slowly transitioning to primarily me. I go to Mount Sinai for doctors, so I'm starting to do that more on my own, dealing with the visits, talking with the doctors, and all that kind of stuff. So.
And Brady, your support system?
Yeah, I would say my parents did a really good job of preparing me since it did happen in high school, and I was going to graduate high school early to go on to college for football. They did a good job of preparing me and making sure I had all the questions answered going on, and I was, like I said earlier too, I was very fortunate to have a nutritionist and dietitians and the medical staff there to help me too. And, I think just, leaning on them as much as possible was important.
That's great. Dave?
Yeah, for parents, I mean, in addition to all the folks that have been talked about, for parents, I think it's other parents, right? Other folks that are sort of in the same boat as you, while no two people with the disease are going to have the exact same situation, talking to other people that are dealing with kids having issues, you learn from each other, you support each other. It's been really, really great.
What about if you had to say kind of what a good day looks like and a bad day looks like? Dave?
I feel like this is a question for my daughter and not me. I mean, a good day is a day you're not thinking about the disease, right? A good day is a day you're just doing your thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I know there was a lot of days I would have a trigger and something would upset me, and then I'd feel like crawling up in a ball and not doing anything the rest of the day. When all my buddies were out playing and I knew there was nothing I could do about it. So those were a lot of bad days, but I think now with Dupixent, I'm able to kind of live life and not really think about it. So.
Zach?
Yeah, I think a good day, as they said, it just boils down to not having to think about it, being able to eat like really nice meals all day and not think about at all if there's a concern about it. That's kind of like the definition of a good day for any kind of EGID related disorder. And bad day, just kind of the opposite of that, where you have to think about it, where you have to plan meticulously every meal, like, so if you're like traveling or something, just really having to take into account the EOE for every part of your day. Like if you're around other people who are eating allergens or stuff like that.
Question online?
Yes, a question from a virtual attendee. What does remission look like for each of you?
Brady?
It's kind of tough because it was tough, but now, now being on Dupixent, and it makes things a lot easier. I'm able to, live a normal life now. I'm not sure what else to include, to be honest. It's just, getting back to some normalcy and, not, like I said earlier, not being able to think about it or, yeah, that's all I got, so.
Yeah, just having periods of time where the medicine or whatever you're doing is working. As Ray said, Dupixent has really made it seem like the disorder isn't active, very minimal symptoms, if any, and being able to eat whatever you want. So dairy, I was anaphylactic to it for a long time, and I've been slightly increasing what I can have, kind of dairy, baked and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what the remission looks like, and other cases of where the medicine worked, and I was able to be very flexible with my diet.
Yeah, I think for us, it's similar, right? Remission would be not noticing symptoms. The only thing I would add is that sometimes it can get a little bit tricky because, at least for Irene, symptoms, maybe she has a cold, right? Maybe she has something else going on, or maybe it's EOE, or sometimes it's there's mild symptoms and we don't really know what they're from. So defining remission as lack of symptoms is not always so straightforward.
Yeah, that's interesting. My son is in remission. He's not on Dupixent, but he doesn't eat dairy. He's 18 years old and doesn't really talk about it that much anymore. But when I ask him, do you think about it? He said, I think about it every day. So that's a difficult thing to think about. Even though he is in remission, he still is challenged with living day to day, not knowing where he's going to eat and being safe. So, yep, go ahead.
We have another virtual question from my teenage son who was recently diagnosed Brady. Can you give some advice or tips about how you navigated achieving a positive mindset and regaining confidence after your diagnosis?
Yeah, that was extremely tough for me. Losing 30 pounds 4 times crushed my confidence a lot. Didn't feel like I was, able to be myself. And I think it was just, leaning on those around me, leaning on my support group. And I think just, knowing that it didn't define me, that I was, going to find a way through and just going to keep pushing no matter what. Because it's tough, because when it hits you out of nowhere, you don't know which way's up. So I think just to, have the confidence of keep pushing through and, to lean on those around you and, just know that, that's not the end of the story, so.
Zach, anything to add?
Sorry?
Anything to add?
No, I think Brady covered it well.
That was one of my big pieces. Going into my redshirt freshman year, I was, in the spring ball and, was battling for position, and I had a relapse and lost 30 pounds, and that was devastating. And it took me about a year and a half to really get my confidence back. And luckily I was able to file for a hardship year and ended up getting one. So now I have an extra year. I got that year back, so that was big for me. But that year was really tough, and there were times I'd go to throw a football and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. So I 100% can attest to that and know that, what it's like to lose your confidence and not, have faith in yourself. And you just got to lean on those around you and, just know at the end of the day, God has a plan for you, so.
Staying on that encouragement, what words of advice would any of you give to someone newly diagnosed, either a patient or advice for a caregiver? Dave?
I think I said this already, but for either of those groups, finding someone else to talk to, right? Find like the person that asked that last question, if they can connect with a couple other teenagers that have this disease, especially maybe if they're they've had it for a while, right? They have a little more experience talking to them, and same with parents, right? Finding other folks in the same boat as you. They don't have answers, but they know what you're going through, and you can help each other.
Yeah, I mean, just developing a support group, finding a good doctor, friends, family that you can trust. It's really help you through it. It's just a matter of a little bit of hard work from you and your support system, and you'll be totally fine, and you'll make it not a big part of yourself. So.
I would say the more disciplined you stay, the easier it becomes, and the more you're able to adapt to it and figure out what works for you.
Great. Question over there.
Hi, my question is for Brady. I wanted to know if when you started in your collegiate football career, did you feel supported by the athletic trainers and coaches, especially when traveling? And is there anything that stands out in your mind that they did or didn't do, just like stands out as?
Yeah, I think I was really able to lean on the nutritionists because when I started my college career at Purdue University, so I had a really close relationship with those nutritionists and dietitians, and they always had to make me a separate shake or a separate box to go with meals and stuff, and so I was able to lean on them. Coaches wise, they're a little different, they're a little more hardcore, so they're harder to lean on, I would say, but just having those nutritionists and dietitians and the medical staff there, and leaning on them and letting them know if I had a problem, they made it really easy for me. So
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story. We really appreciate it. I'd like to invite Mary Jo Strobel, Executive Director of AppFed, to the podium.
Thank you. So I thought we'd wrap up with doing a brief, I like to think it's brief, but it's several pages long, sorry. Update on our mission and achievements in the past year. So for those of you, particularly online, who may not be familiar or with AppFed or new to our community, I figured we would very quickly, let me figure out how to, there we go. Just an overview of who we are and what we do. So we are a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2001, and we work to improve the lives of those affected with eosinophil-associated diseases through education, advocacy, research, awareness, and support. We serve patients, caregivers, clinicians, and researchers by connecting them with information and with one another. And so we're deeply grateful for the many volunteers and donors and education partners who make our work possible. Our mission is centered around what I like to refer to as our mission pillars, which are education, awareness, research, advocacy, and support. And I just want to share with you some of the few exciting highlights and recent achievements under each of these areas. So we'll start with education. So this year, AppFed launched a brand new resource, which is available at navigateeoscare.org. And it's a comprehensive digital platform designed to help patients and caregivers better navigate medical care for these conditions. So we know that navigating insurance and understanding our rights as patients and communicating the most effectively with healthcare providers can all be overwhelming, regardless of what type of eosinophil-associated disease you might be living with. So together with Healing Hugs Haven, which provides services to rare disease patients and caregivers, we developed this digital resource to meet people where they are and whether they're newly diagnosed with the condition or if they had been living with it for years. So the site includes practical tips for preparing for doctor's appointments, for understanding your rights, and self-advocacy strategies for clinical settings. So again, this resource was developed in partnership with patients, and it's a really good tool to help guide and teach teens that are transitioning from pediatric to adult care and to manage their own health needs. So you can find this resource through AppFed's website, appfed.org. It's under our resources tab, but I also included a QR code on the screen to help you navigate there. So throughout the year, AppFed has the opportunity to educate healthcare providers at several professional conferences, including those that are focused on allergy and immunology, pediatrics, and gastroenterology. Attending these meetings gives us the opportunity to connect with providers, many of whom are not familiar with these conditions, so that we can provide them with resources tailored to different subsets of EOS. We share both patient-friendly materials and professional tools to help support diagnosis and ongoing treatment. But these conferences also give us the opportunity to present research that AppFed has co-authored, and I'll highlight a few of those in just a minute. But while we're on site at these events, we take the opportunity to attend the sessions and stay up to date on the latest research and best practices and emerging therapies so that we in turn can keep you informed of developments in the field. In addition to that, we're proud to support scientific meetings that help advance research of eosinophil-associated disease. And this support helps foster research collaboration and innovation in the field, which is critical for advancements. One of the meetings that we recently supported was a single topic symposium organized by NASPGHAN, which is the North American Society for Pediatric Gastroenterology, Hepatology, and Nutrition. And this was a special program that brought together experts to explore and share the latest advancements in diagnosis, treatment, and research across the spectrum of eosinophilic GI disease. We are also supporting the upcoming International Eosinophil Societies Congress, which will take place in France in a few weeks. And this event is a global scientific forum for researchers to share cutting-edge findings on eosinophil biology and related disease. We continue to collaborate on educational programming for healthcare providers. We know that earlier recognition and better management of these conditions can dramatically improve a person's outcomes, and education helps us get there. And so our two most recent collaborations educate providers. The two most recent are on my screen. One discussed the role of type 2 inflammation in patient care and comorbid conditions often involved with type 2 inflammatory diseases like EOE and asthma. The other is a program that teaches providers about biomarkers in severe asthma and emerging and current biologics, personalized treatment planning, and strategies to reduce healthcare disparities. So the programs not only increase awareness of eosinophil-associated diseases among providers, but they also emphasize patient-centered care. One way we support education year-round is through our podcasts and webinars. Our podcast, which is the Real Talk Eosinophilic Diseases, features interviews with community members who join us online to share their insights and expertise and experiences with eosinophil-associated conditions. And we also host the EOS Support webinar series, which covers a wide range of topics from treatments to managing daily life. So I've listed a few of the new and upcoming segments on the screen, but we love hearing about topics that are most important to you. So please continue to send us that feedback because we do incorporate that as we plan out future episodes. Switching gears to look at support, a few examples of how we help people in our community connect with one another outside of our conference is through online communities. Eos Connection on Inspire provides a moderated space to share stories, ask questions, exchange support with your peers 24/7. It engages people from around the world. It's inclusive of all different subsets of eosinophil-associated disease. So you can access it directly through at appfed.inspire.com or through the Inspire app. So it's a large community. We have roughly 20,000 members. Again, it's a great resource. And we're also proud to support a dedicated community for those managing eosinophilic asthma on the MyRabble platform, which is a new platform for us to be involved with. So there's some material on the table about that if that's of interest to you. But it's an app-based community that allows users to engage in real-time conversation and get tips and track progress alongside others that face similar challenges. So these platforms they're more than just sharing information. It's really about building connection, building confidence, as we were just talking about, and community. So we've made, I think, the most amazing strides in awareness this year. I am a little biased, though. One of the most exciting awareness initiatives we were honored to take part in this year was a segment on the Viewpoint with Dennis Quaid. For those of us here on site, hopefully you had a chance to catch some of that segment outside of in the pre-conference area. But I will share a QR code in the URL for those joining us virtually that would like to take a look at this episode. But the program highlights organizations that are making a difference in their field, and we were grateful to have been invited to highlight EOE to a broader audience through this platform. So our segment brought together members of our community to tell the story about EOE and raise awareness of symptoms that would prompt clinical care for those who might recognize them. But the piece also focused on AppFed's work, how we support families and fund research and work with clinicians, researchers, policymakers to drive change. But most importantly, the segment gave voice to the patient experience. A shortened version of the segment was distributed to major cable and network TV stations around the US this year, and it's had at least 4 primetime airings, both on Fox Business Network, but also Discovery Life, who picked up 3 primetime spots, and a tandem email campaign that launched to a targeted segment of Viewpoint's platform and reached about 1 million subscribers. So we're really grateful for the support of Sanofi and Regeneron, who provided us with a grant to be able to move that project forward. And that is the QR code with the link, if anybody wanted to check that out in full. Another campaign I wanted to share with you is the Recognize EOE Awareness campaign. We had partnered with global advocacy groups to create an easy-to-understand guide that helps people, again, spot the signs and symptoms of EOE so that they could talk with their doctor if they recognized those symptoms. So it includes a plain language overview, age-specific symptoms, And then common coping behaviors like cutting food into very small pieces or drinking a lot of liquid to help wash food down. But also the broader impact of EOE, so beyond symptoms like missed time from work or school, the risks of malnutrition if you have a very restricted diet or if you're having difficulty eating food, social isolation, anxiety. But certainly we would invite you to join us in sharing that guide more widely so that other families are able to access the information and potentially arrive to a diagnosis and care sooner and not have to wait for answers. Last month, we celebrated National Eosinophil Awareness Week, which took place May 18th through the 24th, and it's an annual observance that is dedicated to shining a spotlight on eosinophils and eosinophil-associated disease. One of the most powerful visuals of the week was our EOS Awareness Lighting Campaign. We had 51 landmarks, bridges, and buildings throughout the U.S. that lit up magenta for awareness this year. And so for those of you who stepped forward to help us initiate these lightings, we really can't thank you enough, because these displays help us gain visibility in a way that's really hard to ignore. The pictures from the week were just incredible. But we paired the lightings with a daily social media campaign. So that included patient stories. I think there was commentary about patient stories and sharing, which is what we did through social media, educational posts, really bringing those real life experiences to the forefront. So it was really special to see the wonderful support that our community had during this week. So we are grateful for everybody who joined us to spread the word. And while National Eosinophil Awareness Week gave us that platform in the US, this year's observance also had 2 global milestones that extended the reach and message around the globe. And the first was our 3rd annual World Eosinophilic Diseases Day on May 18th. And that day is aimed to raise global awareness for the full spectrum of eosinophil-associated disease, including subsets like eosinophilic asthma, eosinophilic fasciitis, hypereosinophilic syndromes, for example, and more. Later that same week, on May 22nd, we celebrated the very first World EOE Day, and that was coordinated via a global effort with partners across several countries that were participating. This day clearly focused on EOE specifically, but the campaign was Unite for EOE, Know the Signs. Again, that was prompting people to spot symptoms early. And that day saw really widespread engagement on social media, a really strong community participation around the world. Through AppFed's collaborative partnerships alone, we reached more than 2.5 million people on social media on May 22nd, which was significant. And we saw countless comments from people that were sharing their own experience, whether they were noting a recent diagnosis, including some that had received the diagnosis that very same day, or indicating that, they recognized the symptoms in a way that they hadn't, they thought it was just something they didn't need to bring up to their doctor, but then realized that they should probably have a conversation. So you can find the content on our Instagram. It's certainly worth checking out and continuing to share out. But it was really incredible to see how far the movement spread in just the very first year. And in May, thanks to the support of Takeda and Sanofi and Regeneron, we launched our first stop on our national public awareness tour, is what I'm calling it. aimed at broadening public awareness of EOE in places of mass transit. And so this campaign enables us to display signs at airports, rail stations, and on digital bus kiosks in major cities throughout the U.S., enabling us to potentially reach hundreds of thousands of commuters and travelers each day to teach them about some of the common symptoms of EOE. So the campaign is modeled after, and it builds on the momentum of our NASDAQ billboard campaign in Times Square in New York City last year. So in addition to San Diego, where we kicked off the campaign in May, we'll be launching in Baltimore, Denver, Boston, Anaheim, Chicago, and Orlando between now and November. Stop number 2 kicks off actually Monday, I believe, Monday, at Baltimore Washington International Airport. So if your home is one of these cities, or if you find yourself there during the campaign dates, we'd love to see your photos. If you do share it, please tag your location and use the hashtag @FedEOE. Similarly to our EOE campaign, we also received a grant from AstraZeneca to launch a campaign for eosinophilic asthma. So we will be debuting this campaign in the Detroit, Ann Arbor, Michigan area in September, and we're also looking for ways to expand it to Baltimore as well. We're supporting a number of advocacy initiatives this year, including but not limited to insurance coverage of medical foods, step therapy reform, allergen labeling, and pharmacy benefit manager reforms, all of which you can read about and get involved with at appfed.org under our advocacy tab. And I know this was discussed a little bit yesterday, but we have been tirelessly advocating this year to save the Consortium of Eosinophilic Gastrointestinal Disease Researchers, or SIGR for short, which is a collaborative NIH-funded research network for EGIDs. And their important work advances research and care through multi-center studies, patient-informed priorities, and long-term disease tracking. They also train up researchers to better study these diseases. So in April, we had received the disappointing news that SIGR's application for continued NIH funding was withdrawn over a technical issue without an avenue to correct or resubmit. So we quickly launched an advocacy campaign that urged the NIH and the decision makers to recognize the need for continued investment in this work. And we urged all of you to join us to make your voices heard, and provided tools for our community to do that, to help them contact their representatives in Congress. We also work directly with government affairs experts to elevate the issue to the highest levels that we could, and submitted formal letters to Congress and to the NIH, as well as national press outreach to really shine the light on the problems of not renewing this grant. But we're incredibly grateful for everyone who stepped up during this time and advocated along with us. Despite some promising communication from NIH earlier, we recently learned that the opportunity to apply for funding has been changed and moved to October of this year. So if the application is accepted and we receive the refunding, it's going to push SIGR's work to the summer of 2026, at least the funding for that work, until summer of 2026. So in the meantime, it's really the generosity of patients and families and community members that's enabling AppFed to help support Seeger's work as much as we can. And I'll share a little more about that in just a few slides. But these are important diseases to study, and discoveries in one subset of eosinophil-associated disease can benefit another subset too. So please keep reminding your members of Congress that funding for this type of research matters, and your voices do make a difference. So if you are looking for tools to help you connect or to communicate effectively with your members of Congress, visit appfed.org/advocacy, and you can find some tools there. This year, we also served on a steering committee to co-develop a global paper for EOE to support a policy landscape that better provides for the needs of people with EOE. So prevalence has steadily increased for the past 2 decades, and despite the increases in cases, we still see limited awareness, particularly in primary and emergency care, which can contribute to a delay in diagnosis, inadequate access to therapies, and barriers to specialist care still persist, and of course gaps when transitioning from pediatric to adult care systems, and the lifelong burden that's not reflected in policy for chronic disease management. So one of the key goals outlined in this new position paper is to achieve what's called a more supportive policy environment for patients. And what that really means is that the systems meant to help people with EOE, like health insurance, healthcare systems, school accommodations, that are set up to recognize the burden of disease and respond to it more appropriately. So if you want to check out the full publication, there is a QR code. The URL is on my slide. So as I just discussed, access to treatment can still be a challenge for EOE, even when other conditions of eosinophil-associated disease also, but even when there is an FDA-approved treatment option available. We are starting to gather data. This particular survey is specific to EOE, but if you have a different subset and are experiencing access challenges, we'd certainly want to hear from you as well. But we're gathering data from people in the US who, again, have encountered challenges with insurance coverage for a medication that is FDA approved for EOE. And that your responses and the information that you provide are going to help us better advocate for more consistent access. So if you or somebody you know has been prescribed an approved medication but insurance is not covering it or has made it difficult to access it, we want to hear from you. So please just take a few minutes to fill out a few questions. appfed.org/EOE Med Survey, and there is a QR code on the screen. Looking at the research arm of our mission, since fall, we've co-authored 9 research posters presented at major medical society meetings, and we co-authored 3 peer-reviewed journal articles. These projects explored issues like barriers to treatment, symptom burden, multimorbidity, and type 2 inflammation, and the extent of the GI tract involvement across EGIDs. The photo on the screen was taken at Digestive Disease Week this May. I had the honor of presenting a poster alongside co-author, that's Hannah Jaffe from the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America. Our poster was awarded a blue ribbon for Poster of Distinction, which we were truly honored at such a large medical meeting to have that work recognized. So for those looking to view that poster, there is a summary of it. The poster is available in our virtual poster hall, which you can access through the app, along with many others that highlight AppFed's collaborative contributions. And I'm thrilled to formally share the announcement that thanks to our donors, we are awarding 2 HOPE pilot grants this year. The quality of the applications that we got were just really fantastic. Each proposal was reviewed and scored by an independent panel of research peers who helped guide AppFed to the most impactful research to support. So this year we're funding 2 two-year projects. Each were awarded $100,000. Dr. Nicholas Hogan at UC San Diego Health. Dr. Hogan and his team have developed experimental tools to study how gene expression and function of eosinophils and neutrophils can be different from patient to patient. By studying and comparing the cells in healthy subjects, patients with severe asthma, patients with EGPA, we can better understand what causes different aspects of EGPA, and we can better diagnose and treat both asthma and EGPA. So it's a very exciting study that he's embarking on. Dr. Seema Aceves is our second award winner. She's from the University of California, Rady's Children's Hospital in San Diego. And she's researching how skin lipids and cytokines reflect EOE presence and activity and histology. So this study the findings might help identify people at risk for EOE. The data might also show which skin lipid imbalances and cytokines detected via tape strips distinguish active EOE from remission. So the findings could transform EOE assessment and lead to a non-invasive diagnostic marker. So we're very grateful for the donors and the fundraisers, the volunteer fundraisers who have raised money to support these research awards. And despite the funding delays that we had mentioned earlier, we remain committed to supporting the critical work of SIGR. The most recent SIGR work we've supported includes research into emergency department visits for food impaction, a study examining whether allergic inflammation plays a role in how quickly the stomach empties into the small intestine, which can guide which treatments are tested in future clinical trials for EOG. And we were proud to support 4 new Eco Hirano scholars, which are helping to train the next generation of researchers in the field. Community support is what drives our research forward, and this slide shows a few of the ways that people have recently stepped up to make a difference. We're really excited about a few upcoming fundraisers, including a Cars for a Cause in Quakertown, Pennsylvania on September 14th, organized by a family that has been impacted by eosinophilic fasciitis, and a ticket fundraiser through the New York Islanders this coming season. So keep an eye out for information about that. Most recently, we were recipients from proceeds from a Lego-themed fundraiser in California. And then all of you who have participated in our virtual Walk for Hope last month, again, just thank you for your support. So if you want to support research today, you can visit appfed.org/donate. You can also text Hope for EOS to 53555, or host a community event in your own neighborhood, and we can help support your efforts there. So again, deeply grateful for every dollar donated, and thank you for your support. So what's next? Besides a timer that's telling me I'm out of time? Looking ahead for the rest of the year, we are We have the ongoing awareness campaigns that I spoke about earlier. We have targeted education for not only pediatricians, but also family medicine providers, general practitioners, so that they can more easily recognize the signs and symptoms of eosinophil disorder and get people referred on to a specialist. We are partnering on a number of programs for doctors to learn about these conditions for continued medical education. And we have a number of research publications that are in various stages of development, including a manuscript for our Life with EOE report. That's part of the poster that I just shared earlier. A journal publication that sheds light onto patient burden with hypereosinophilic syndromes in the United States. And I just got word the day before yesterday that it will be published in the next issue of JACI Global, which is the Journal of Clinical Allergy and Clinical Immunology. And a patient perspective manuscript on the use of elemental formula for EGID. We are also planning some needed updates to our website, some new content, and best of all, I think, is navigation improvement. In terms of what's next in our support programming, we are launching AppFed Connect, which is a new initiative offering small group virtual supports in partnership with the Center for Chronic Illness. Our first group, which is for youths aged 10 to 14 living with EOE, is up and running, but in August we'll be expanding to include an EOE family support network, EOE adult support network, and a support network for those affected by more rare subsets of eosinophilic disease like hypereosinophilic syndromes, EGPA, eosinophilic fasciitis. You can learn more about the programs through appfed.org/appfedconnect, and I did include a QR code. Our aim is really to expand this program beyond the ones that I mentioned to have even more programming available in 2026. We talked a little earlier about sharing your story and the platform to do it. It is one of the most powerful tools that we have as a community is our stories. So when you share that experience, not only can it inform medical research and help educate healthcare providers on what your journey is like, it can also highlight the unmet needs, where are the gaps. That in turn can guide advocacy priorities. It inspires hope, it gives inspiration to others, and it could even help other people recognize symptoms of this condition that they didn't even understand might have been a symptom of a condition. So we would invite you to share your story by scanning the QR code on the slide. You can visit appfed.org/share your story. And oftentimes there are opportunities where we will take a look at entries there as we start to build out what that looks like to make a library of these. Certainly there are opportunities that come up throughout the year. We would love to be able to reach out to you to be able to participate in different platforms to share out. So while our time here in Raleigh is coming to a close, that's actually my last slide. Yay. But I would invite you to join us again on our virtual conference platform, July 16th through 18th. So it's an extension of this conference. Take a few week break, regroup. We'll be back online in the conference platform, hearing from a number of people who are researching eosinophil-associated disease. So we're going to take a deeper look at a variety of topics, including but not limited to what are the shared mechanisms that are linking these diseases together. Insights into subsets like eosinophilic fasciitis and hypereosinophilic syndrome, and the progress that's being made by research that's been funded by AppFed. So keep an eye out for our communications about this July virtual event. You'll have access to the recordings for the rest of the year. There's nothing you need to do to re-register. Since you're already registered for this conference, you'll have access to that as well. But as we wrap up, I sincerely want to thank you for joining us today, whether it's in person or online. For attending this year's event. We are incredibly grateful to the many education partners who made this event possible so we could keep costs down as low as we can for families to make it as accessible as possible, because we know chronic disease and living with one, it's not inexpensive. So we, wherever we can, want to keep that education accessible and events like this affordable. So thank you to our partners for helping us to do that. To the many dedicated volunteers, our small staff, our board members, who really, they work tirelessly, not just on this conference, but in support of our mission year-round. I really cannot thank them enough. And we would love your feedback. So as we complete our event and wrap up in the coming days, you'll receive a link to a post-event survey. It's also on our virtual conference platform. It's at the top navigation. But please send us your thoughts with the survey. We love the feedback, topics that are of interest to you, what was missing, what would you have liked to have heard about. We take all of this feedback not only to improve next year's event, but we can inform topics and speakers throughout the year through things like our webinars and our podcast. So again, we would appreciate that feedback. So with that, I will say thank you once again for attending. I enjoyed my time here with all of you. To speak and be in person, it's just so wonderful. And thank you for being a part of just this amazing community. And we wish you safe travels. Thank you.